Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
I am blessed.
Hey, I wanted to thank you. What a wonderful time we had on Friday. Friday evening with you, Dr. Sergey Sorin and his wife, Ed from Florida. Mrs. Finelli and I had a wonderful time having dinner with you. I want to thank you. It was really delightful.
Obviously, thank you. And of course, it was because you had introduced me many times ago to Ed Marvini, who is also
awesome,
a wonderful person.
Yep, Ed's an instructor, Sergey Sorin, Dr. Sorin, and of course, Dr. Shealy. And so there are 4 instructors at the dinner table. And I'll tell you what, I think we were laughing louder and harder than any other table.
I think that all other tables in the restaurant combined.
Absolutely true. And it was nice of them to let us stay.
I have been twice in years past, just for my laughing alone, have been invited to be quiet or leave.
Really? Well, they did not do that at the restaurant. That was really nice. And it was a wonderful time. And we talked about some things that I'd like to talk a little bit more about a little bit later in this broadcast. Scalar energy.
Oh, wow.
And your plans
love
for
to talk
it.
about that. And anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that just a little bit later in the broadcast, Dr. Shealy. And so I was looking at the internet, and I saw this post. And it's about this young lady, college age. And she had something called rosacea, if I'm saying that right. Mm-hmm. It's this skin rash, if you will. It looks like a rash, and she's all reddish, and it's quite unsightly, and looks like something's really, really wrong with her. And so she had been to the doctors, and doctors said, well, it's a condition and there's no treatment. And she decided that was not good enough. So what she did was she decided to remove stress from her environment, and she decided to get rid of gluten. And sure enough, her skin cleared up and she looks just great. Interesting. And you've been warning us about gluten for years. And here's just a mainstream media story about how gluten and stress, and that's something else you've been talking about, can cause the body to react negatively to those influences, those chemicals.
Well, what's really... I'm sorry.
Any surprise to you?
Of course not.
No, right?
Interestingly, I wanted to tell you about a situation that came up night before last. I had a patient scheduled to be seen yesterday morning for follow-up. On the afternoon before that, I got an email from her that she was much too sick to come. She'd gone to Denver and was trying to drive back and became so ill she went to the emergency ward with brain fog, with inability to think straight, every symptom in the body you can imagine. She was totally evaluated. Nothing was found. but she also began her email to me that she was so upset over the election outcome that she couldn't function. And so I talked to her on the phone yesterday morning, and I said to her what I will say to anyone about anything. You cannot afford the luxury of anger, guilt, anxiety, or depression over anything. Making yourself physically ill over the outcome of the election is almost as stupid as the protesters today. Because if you cannot change something, there is no reason to allow yourself to kill your body with stress symptoms. And so stress is a remarkably variable problem, but anything that makes you angry, if you can't deal with it, if you can't settle it, then get over it.
Mm-hmm.
I
was talking with our daughter I was talking with our daughter, and she was telling us about how some of the universities on the East Coast have set up safe zones for people who are so upset about the election they just can't handle it. And this is a place where they can go and feel safe and calm, and they have coloring books. I'm talking about for young adults.
Okay.
So it will help them deal with the stress of the election or selection announcement. And for the life of me, I really can't understand it. Of course, I was paying attention to, the blow-by-blow announcements of by the candidates, and of course, I did not like the witch, and of course, I'm glad she's not at the helm, and I'm glad she doesn't have her finger on the button. And I'm really glad that she has been sidelined. I really am, because enough is enough of them. They've done all the damage they've done more damage than they should have been allowed to do. Well, but I can't understand how people can have their lives spiral out of control as a result of this. And these are people who don't really know all that much. They haven't experienced that much. They haven't lived long enough to be fired a bunch of times and lose their jobs and lose their houses, and they haven't experienced real pain yet. They're still healthy enough where they haven't faced, the white coat syndrome where the doctor shakes his head and says it's terminal. They haven't faced that yet. And yet their lives are spiraling out of control.
I think we need a word other than snowflakes for those people. And my word for them is blank, blank, wimp.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I don't understand how people can be so wrapped up into themselves. And here's another example of this, Dr. Shealy. I was reading a story about car crashes. And let me tie this to something that I know almost firsthand. We have a dear family friend. She's a young gal, and she comes to the farm, pretty often. A dear friend of one of our children. And so she was in the parking lot at the Chinese factory outlet, Walmart. And she was waiting for the car in front of her to move ahead, and so she could go down that lane and find a parking space. So all she was stopped. Another car backs right out of the parking space, right into the side of her vehicle. Now, the question is, was the person who backed into our young lady friend, who was not moving at all, so her vehicle was stopped, was the person distracted? Was the person just not paying attention? Was the person careless? Well, what we're finding out is there are more and more accidents in parking lots.
And because of listening, talking on a cell phone or texting, probably.
That's exactly right. And one of the first things that a young person does when he or she gets into a vehicle, and I've noticed this over and over and over, and I don't do this. That's why it's so obvious to me. The first thing they do is turn the radio on. That's the first thing they do. Now, and then, it's generally loud. Boom, boom, boom. The bass is boom. And it's distracting. And I don't understand how a person can pay attention while being distracted by the radio and the cell phone at the same time. Backing up, texting, backing up on the phone, looking around or allegedly looking around left, right, forward, backward, maybe backward, while backing up. I don't understand how they can do that while they're looking around on the cell phone at the same time. One hand on the cell phone, one hand on the wheel, radio thumping. It's dangerous to everyone around. It's dangerous to young children who are below the height of the rear of the car. It's dangerous to the elderly who are walking slowly through the parking lot. There aren't lanes for people walking. And what's happening, Dr. Shealy, according to this article that I read, what's happening is that people are being run over, backed over, hit with the front of vehicles while they're walking. So not only are there car accidents, but people walking are being hit. Carts are being backed into. Carts with children are being backed into. All because of this, and I would have to say it's carelessness, distraction with these, I'm about ready to lose my temper. I'm trying not to. Cell phones. It really makes me angry, Dr. Shealy.
Now, wait a minute. Don't stay too angry. My feeling about it is, yes, I agree. I state it, and immediately after I state it, I take a deep breath and let it go. In other words, I tell my body, okay, it's their crap, not mine.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I did as I was describing this, and I was about ready to pound my fist on the studio desk here because I was so angry about this carelessness. I took a breath. It's okay, but we need to stop it. We really need to stop this recklessness, and it's not just that. It's recklessness and carelessness and me first everywhere we go with these young people. It's out of control. And I think we are at fault. We are at fault as parents and parents of parents for not putting our foot down saying, have you lost your mind? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to travel at night when it's dark and it's dangerous. We are not going to drive with our cell phone. We could have rules as parents. We could. And I did. Class Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com. NormShealy.com. And that's where you can go to get the free newsletter multiple times per week. And that's where you can go to buy Dr. Shealy's Bliss, his books, and his magnesium lotion, and other medical miracles. Yeah. Dr. Shealy, about traveling in the family automobile, I'd like to share some of my thoughts, and maybe parents and grandparents, we can regain control. Well, when our daughter first started going, she was the first to drive, and she was attending the university, 20 miles down the road. And we said, you're not going to get your own car. That's not going to happen. But you can have use of the family automobile for legitimate purposes. You just don't hop in the vehicle and travel around. But there's some rules, and there were actually 21 of them. And I drew up this contract, typed it up, and I had her sign it. And this was for her use of the vehicle. She had to do these things. And one of them was she did have a cell phone, and those were the days we could turn your cell phone off. And the agreement was, the cell phone will be off in the vehicle, and it will be in the back seat, or on the back seat. The cell phone will not be in the front seat. It will not be within reach, and it will be off. And the only reason to have the cell phone was if there was an emergency, she could go to the back seat of this four-door vehicle. It was a SUV, a small SUV, and she could open the back door, get the cell phone out, and call if she needed help or had an emergency. The radio was to be off at all times. The headlights were to be on at all times she was operating the vehicle. And these were the days when the headlights didn't automatically come on. And that no one other than family would be a passenger in this vehicle. No one. That meant that there would be no silly children acting up, distracting the driver, which would be our daughter, in this vehicle. And those were just a few of the restrictions, conditions, and agreement line items that we made for the operation of the family vehicle. And it worked out pretty darn well. And I suggest that, class, if you are a parent or a grandparent, you might want to consider doing something similar to that to help keep your children from being in car crashes.
Well, during the break, I sent you a link to one of numerous studies and reports that talking on a cell phone is equal to having had a drink of whiskey.
I believe it.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely believe it, because there are times, Dr. Shealy, when people are on their cell phones and they have lost time. They literally have been talking and trying to do something else at the same time, and they really have forgotten that amount of time that they were on the cell phone. They really, it's gone.
Yeah.
Not only, is it physically gone, but their recollection of what happened during that phone call is not complete.
Well, the number of accidents and deaths from using cell phones is now rapidly exceeding those from alcoholism.
Okay. Here's an article from CBS News, November 21, 2016. CBSnews.com. Title: Why hundreds are killed in crashes in parking lots and garages every year. The National Safety Council finds as many as 2/3 of drivers may be pulling into shopping centers distracted. 1 in 5 accidents happen in parking lots. The leading culprit for distraction is the cell phone, reports CBS News correspondent Chris Van Cleve. By making calls or texting while driving in a parking lot, researchers say that the slower speeds give people a false sense of security. Gives them a false sense of security. That's the problem. That's one of the problems. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back, and we're going to be talking about scalar energy. We're going to be talking about the ring of air, fire, water, crystal, and earth. We'll be talking about energy medicine. We'll be right back. Class, we're talking with Dr. Norman Shealy, normshealy.com. And Dr. Shealy, just like to finish a little bit more about this cell phone distraction. It says in this article from CBS News that the National Safety Council found on average at least 60,000 are injured and 500 or more die in the 50,000 plus crashes in parking lots and garages every year. And it goes on to say, it's just as dangerous to be distracted in a parking lot going 5 miles an hour as it is going 50, according to the National Safety Council President, Deborah Hersman. Goes on to say that a recent survey said that 66% felt comfortable making calls while driving in a parking lot, and more than half would text in a parking lot. And roughly half of the drivers were okay with sending emails, using social media, taking pictures, or watching videos. 42% said they would video chat. Now, this is in parking lots, driving in parking lots. And so a woman was asked about this, and she said that she was more focused on her phone than cars around her. And she was asked, do you think you give the parking lot the same amount of attention as you give the road? And she responded, not really. Not really. Can you imagine operating a 2,000-pound projectile through a parking lot and not paying attention? So, Dr. Shealy, here's the medical part of this question. Is it the fact that our attention is just diverted to something else, or is it that plus the electromagnetic frequencies of the cell phone, the gigahertz frequencies interfering with our ability to concentrate? Is it both? What is it that makes us unable to pay attention? Or is it that we think that we have to be in this social arena where we have to have approval from our friends?
Well, it's everything, of course. Everything affects everything. And so I think it is almost impossible to have a cell phone near your head, at least, without it affecting your thinking ability and the function electrically of your brain. But this whole thing is part of the same blank snowflake idiocy. It's not taking responsibility for your actions. It's beyond ignorance. Ignorance is ignoring fact. It's not knowing. Ignorance is beyond stupid. And it is immoral, unethical, unconscientious. And what else can I say? It is a symptom of a mental illness, in my opinion.
As you say this, Dr. Shealy, I was thinking about school. And I was thinking about cell phones simultaneously. And I was thinking about ignoring the facts. And so here's the challenge. So what would happen if we said to a high school class, tell you what, final exams coming up, next week. And, that you have 45 minutes for the final exam. I'll tell you what we'll do. If you want to do this, we will give you twice as much time to take the final exam. Not 45 minutes, but twice 45 minutes. The only catch is you'll have to be using your cell phone talking to someone while you're taking your exam. We'll give you twice as much time to take the final exam. But you have to be on the cell phone while you do that. I think that would be fascinating. I'll bet you that the results would show that even with twice as much time, the students would do more poorly on the final exam because they would not be able to divide their time in a time division multiplex of 50% of the time to the cell phone, 50% to the exam. I'll bet you that they would do, at best, 25% as well as they would if they didn't have their cell phone on. Well,
interestingly, I just looked up cell phone attention deficit disorder. There are 957,000 references to that on the internet. So we have another addition to the mental illness disease that is so rampant in the world today.
Dr. Shealy, as you were growing up, and as I were growing up, and many who are, near our age, we were looking at accumulating assets, accumulating things to make our lives better, things for the long term, things for not just the moment, but for the long term. Not everybody did that. Many got distracted. Many liked taking vacations instead of, working hard and accumulating and saving and those kinds of things. But today, I think the emphasis by the snowflakes is obviously it's me first, but I have the right to be happy. I deserve and I have the right to feel good. And I deserve to do what I want to do, regardless of the consequences. And I want to share with everybody what I just did, meaning, I just took a picture of myself. Here I am. Look at me. Look at my dog. Look at me and my dog. Look at my dog eating a dog biscuit. That's us.
I call that drivel.
Yes.
And I'm being kind.
Yes. Do you have a thought for, Thanksgiving is coming up, and we've probably even forgotten what that's all about. But do you have a thought on, like, our family, we'll have some of our family together, and we will be sitting around, and we're going to invite some neighbors over, and we're going to spend some time with friends and family. And we're going to talk about some important issues, and how we can make things better. Do you think that Thanksgiving is a time to be thankful and to say, what can we do so we can even be more thankful next year?
Absolutely. I think that is, part of family essence, the whole essence of being a family. Now remember that, among other things, conscientiousness involves being responsible and organized, but it also is related to having a network of friends. Mm-hmm. And ideally, at least some core part of your family is among your network of friends.
Yep. So I guess our recommendation for Thanksgiving is obviously to think about the things that you're thankful for, class, and talk with your family and friends about how you can work together, pull together, make the load a little lighter for everybody concerned, and better, because I still believe the rough times are still ahead of us. Just because we have this illusion that everything is fixed, we still have threats all over it. The sun is not firing on all cylinders. The sun has some dark spots. That will affect our weather. We had a massive earthquake just outside of Fukushima. It impacted Fukushima. It was a serious, serious concern. I was concerned about it. The reports are everything is okay. I don't know if I believe it. So there's so many things that can go wrong in our lives that let's not let our guard down. Let's continue to be vigilant. And please take the time to spend those hours with family and friends to that end. Please consider doing that. Dr. Shealy, energy medicine. I was on the internet today, and I typed in energy medicine, and there you are. There you are, 8 minutes, 59 seconds. Dr. Norm Shealy on energy medicine. You're talking about Edgar Cayce's ARE. Would you share with us what that's all about, please?
Well, everything is energy, of course. I mean, we're talking on a phone. That the phone is energy. Our voice is energy. All your thoughts are energy. But over the last 30 years, thanks actually to Elmer Green, the developer inventor of biofeedback itself, he has reminded us that there have been throughout history all kinds of energetic approaches to health and healing. Now, he did not, resurrect, if you will, the idea of Edgar Cayce, but Edgar Cayce existed in the first half, 45 years, if you will, of the last century. And Edgar Cayce was a man who would go into a deep trance and was extremely psychic or intuitive and gave almost 15,000 so-called readings related, and well over 2/3 of those were related to health and medicine. And Edgar often recommended all kinds of things, electrical, chemical, nutritional, etc. So, in a sense, Edgar Casey is the person who really introduced in modern society the concept of energy as a healing tool. So I got interested in this in 1972 when I was encouraged to take a workshop at the Edgar Casey Foundation, the Association of Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. And I went down for this 5 or 6 day meeting, and it revolutionized my entire life.
Let's talk about that when we come back. And ultimately, let's talk about scalar energy and maybe the relationship between scalar energy and energy medicine and all the energies, the electromagnetism, chemical, vibrational frequencies, waves, shapes, and sound and pressure. Dr. Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, we were talking about Edgar Casey, we were talking about energy medicine, and you were telling us about how it changed your life, how things were different after you learned about this. Could you share that with us, please?
Well, yes, I went to this meeting, and during a harp concert early in the meeting, I had an out-of-body experience. And in other words, I was up under the ceiling looking down at 200 people below. I have to say, once you've had an out-of-body experience, it does change your perspective about everything. And other people have had these under other circumstances, but it begins to let you understand that you are not tied into your physical body. You can leave it, if you will, not always at will, although you can learn to do it almost at will. And it does open you up to looking at a broader picture. Now, from a medical and scientific point of view, I had already gotten into some of the fundamentals of energy medicine, which often use electricity. In other words, from the time I was in medical school, my first summer after my first year of medical school, I started using electrical stimulation of the brain in cats to understand the function of the brain. And in 1966, I introduced both dorsal column stimulation, which is an electrical stimulation of the spinal cord, and transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation of TENS for control of pain through electricity on the surface of the body. And, everything in your body is electrical. There is also chemical. And we can change everything from thinking to intuition, etc., with electrical stimulation. So back in 75, I began using electrical stimulation across the head to control depression and insomnia and jet lag. And in the last 5 years, I've added pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, which is being exposed to a field instead of putting it directly on the skin. Just it approaches your body, if you will, in an electrical field. And now we've begun working on scalar energy. Now, scalar is the most difficult of all to describe. It is energy which cannot be measured, and that all you can do is measure the effects of it. It goes many, many times the speed of light. I look upon things like spiritual healing, which I've also been interested in since the early 70s, since I got involved in the Casey work, of a healer, a spiritually oriented healer, being able to send energy. And I've demonstrated that, for instance, a healer in Ottawa, Canada, about 1,000 miles from here, can affect your electroencephalogram here in Springfield. And more recently, a healer in New Jersey, about 800 miles away, can affect your electroencephalogram here in Springfield. Well, we bought scalar tools, if you will, which arrived last Friday, and the first thing we did was just to get an electroencephalogram without scalar and then add scalar, and guess what? It changes your electroencephalogram. So that means it can change the way you think and the way your brain functions throughout your body. Now, there are published articles claiming all kinds of miraculous events with scalar treatments, ranging from curing advanced kidney failure, cancer. There's statements that claim it activates stem cells, but nobody has measured stem cells themselves with scalar energy, and actually we are doing that right now, too. We've measured our CD34, both Dr. Sergey Sorin and I, and we're going to be exposed to about 24 hours of scalar therapy over the next 3 or 4 weeks and remeasure our CD34. So it's a big, broad field.
Dr. Shealy, when we come back, do we have an announcement that we're going to make about broadcasting regarding scalar technology next week? Okay.
You bet.
Let's talk about that. Class, this is a first. This has never been done before, and we're going to do it live. We'll tell you more about it when we come back right after these few short commercial announcements and top-of-the-hour news. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Dr. Norman Shealy. And class, we're talking about scalar energy. And let me just set this up so Dr. Shealy can explain the rest of the story to you. So on last Friday night, we were having dinner, and I was seated next to Dr. Shealy and across from Dr. Sergey Sorin, and they were talking about this scalar technology equipment that they've purchased, and it has arrived, and they were beginning to use it. And I asked Dr. Shealy about scalar energy and how it worked and what it is, and I was absolutely fascinated. And then we decided that maybe we should do a study live on the air. Is that what happened, Dr. Shealy?
You bet. Now, have you heard the really bad news?
No.
Well, Ozark Community Hospital, where I've been doing the calcium scores for the last year and a half, when I first started with them a year ago or so, the cost was $100. In April of this year, they changed it to $50. And as of yesterday, possibly because of my talk about this last week, which brought in many, many, many requests for the calcium score, they've raised the price to $170.
Wow. Do we need to call somebody?
I'm sorry?
Do we need to call somebody?
Well, I tried calling the administrator, but he hasn't returned my call. But, you know, it's going to make it prohibitive, of course, because even Merciless charges only $100. Of course, it takes you 3 weeks to get the report and a month to get it scheduled and a month to get the report. But, you know, it's discouraging.
So we have a small wrinkle in this. All right. So maybe we might need to delay this a week. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, what I'm saying is that I doubt most people are willing to spend $170 to get a test that could put them into our study. I mean, we do plan on carrying out the study if we get people who've got the calcium score. Interestingly, by Friday morning last week, the morning after my own radio show, which I announced it, they were already booked up to the 28th of November. And I don't know whether it's the remarkable increased volume and they got greedy or what, but all I know is people are having trouble getting it scheduled. On the other hand, if there's anybody out there who's had a recent calcium score within the last couple of months, well, our plan is to give them, at no charge, a minimum of 12 and preferably 24 hours in our scalar room with a repeat of the calcium score 2 weeks after they finish the exposure to scalar.
Okay. So, do you think we're still on for next Wednesday?
Yes.
Or do you want to? Okay. All right. So, can you describe what we're going to do? The plan class is to broadcast live. Dr. Shealy and I and Dr. Sergey Sorin will be in this clinic, Dr. Shealy's clinic, discussing and explaining exactly what's happening, the procedure, what we're doing, what we're experiencing, what we're feeling, live in the scalar room. First time ever done live on radio, as far as I can tell.
Well, it's an interesting thing because this energy goes through walls, of course, as does a lot of electric energy. And these little boxes, there are 4 of them that produce the scalar energy, and apparently they fill the entire room. They could fill a room at least 150 feet long. So our room is hardly that. It's not even 50 feet long. And you just lie there and absorb the energy in your body. And you can talk. We can have any number of people sitting in the room, and all of them get the benefit. So we'll talk about it next Wednesday.
And okay, so the plan is we're going to broadcast this live next Wednesday, and you'll get to hear blow by blow how this works. I'll be there. Dr. Shealy will be there, and Dr. Sergey Sorin will be there with us, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I guess we have some participants in this already. Now, is my calcium score of months ago still viable, or do I need to get one?
No, I think it's adequate because you haven't done anything unequivocal to change it. And so if you're willing to, spend the hours that are needed, I would love to have you part of the study.
Sure. And Mrs. Finelli has had a calcium score the same day as I've had it, and maybe if that's okay with you, we'll get her to come as well.
Of course, you bet.
Oh, that'd be really something, getting her behind the microphone. That would be an achievement.
Now, everybody better be there about 9:15.
Okay, and I'll need to be there earlier to set up the equipment. And during the commercial break at the top of the hour, Dr. Shealy, I made sure we have everything, and I believe we do. The only thing we'll need is an internet connection.
We've got that.
Will Wi-Fi be available for that?
Yes.
Okay, I can make that happen then. Okay, I'm all excited about that. So, Dr. Shealy, can you tell us a little bit more about energy medicine? Because it's everything, right? We're talking about chemical energy, electromagnetic energy,
physical, emotional, mental, solar, earth. It's all part of the whole.
Now, you mentioned solar, and I'm concerned about the sun. The sun is not firing as it was when we were growing up. The sun has some dark spots. So there's some holes in the big ball of fire, and that will obviously change our weather. And my calculations, I mean, my pencil on the back of a napkin calculations kind of show that about 10% of the sun is not firing the way it used to, based on the amount of real estate that's dark on the sun. That's an enormous percentage to be down. Because when I was in elementary school, Dr. Shealy, I was told by my teachers, who I believed everything they said at that time, that, the sun is going to be firing for millions of years. It's just going to keep going and going. And I'm thinking, gas tanks run out of fuel. They don't go forever. Light bulbs don't burn forever. How could this possibly last for, that long? And now we're seeing that there's some problems with the sun firing. And it's the ball of flame is not as bright. It's not as big in terms of maybe BTUs, however we would measure it. It doesn't seem to be as bright, as big as it was, because 10% of it's dim. Now, that energy, will that affect us, do you think, Dr. Shealy? The way we feel? Will we not feel the same?
Evidence is quite overwhelming that there have been changes like this in the sun throughout millions of years, probably. In other words, the off-and-on glaciation of the Earth versus the warmer periods in between seem to be related to sun activity. And there is increasing temperature to a greater or lesser extent. A book back in the early 80s called The Survival of Civilization was the thing that first brought this to my attention, by John Hamaker, Hamaker. And he was an engineer who had retired and studied this kind of thing. And he felt that the 90,000 rough years of glaciation versus the 10,000 years of non-glaciation, so to speak, were all due to solar activity, long before people could possibly have affected the atmosphere enough to change the climate. And the evidence is that we have these waning periods in which sun activity actually varies. So it seems to have varied for at least many hundreds of thousands of years. And we may be in a time when we are on the verge of a glaciation again. In other words, the Earth warms to a certain and then all of a sudden, some winter, it's warm enough at the equator that a lot of evaporation occurs that goes up north and begins to be deposited as ice or snow. Let's face it, what we know about astronomy at this point is certainly far greater than it has been any time in history up until, this last 100 years. We've been able to study these things in greater detail. So it looks to me as if the current variations in sun activity could be, let's say, sometime in the next 40 or 50 years, the prelude to a new glacial experience.
Dr. Shealy, tonight, do you have an event in Springfield?
Yes, even though it is the night before Thanksgiving, I will be at the Doubletree at 6 p.m. to discuss healthy nutrition, one of the most important of all topics.
Healthy nutrition. That's tonight in Springfield, Missouri, absolutely free, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at the Doubletree Hotel. It's right near 44. Dr. Shealy will be presenting healthy nutrition. And when we come back, would you tell us a little bit about what those who can make it will be learning in your seminar tonight? We'll be right back. So class, tonight Dr. Shealy is going to be at the Doubletree Hotel in Springfield, Missouri, and from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m., absolutely free presentation. Dr. Shealy, one more time, what would we be learning at this free seminar at the Doubletree in Springfield, Missouri, 6 to 7 tonight, November 23rd?
The simple thing about nutrition is I can put it in 2 words: eat real food. If you eat real food, the chances are you will be pretty well off from a nutritional point of view. Now, real food to me is a product that was raised on a farm and has not been altered by any chemical means. It might have a tiny bit of salt in it, but nothing else. If you put anything other than real food in it, it's no longer real food. So that rules out the 45% of all food in this country eaten at fast food restaurants, and 60% of all the food sold in grocery stores. In other words, if it's in those aisles other than the outer aisles of the grocery store, the chances are it's not real food. That's how simple it is.
Okay. So we're talking about we can eat yogurt, we can eat vegetables, we can eat meats, but, some meats have been raised with hormones and antibiotics. That's going to be tough.
Well, ideally, of course, you would want your meat to be quite a bit more organic than it is. In other words, I wouldn't buy Tyson chicken, for instance, anywhere. Mm-hmm. Pork and beef are up for grabs because you can't all find organically raised those kinds of things. And today, of course, so much of the seafood is so-called farm-raised, which is not real. But this begins to go, into the more complex things of eating. Now, again, the second rule for eating is that 80% of the food you eat should be fruits and vegetables, and only 20% all the other things. And if you do that, you're likely to keep your blood pH slightly alkaline, 7.4, which it needs to be. If you eat a lot of non-fruit vegetable stuff, all of the other foods that are not fruits and vegetables are acid-producing. So it means that the 20% that is meat and eggs and dairy needs to be only 20% of the volume, roughly, of what you eat. If you can follow those two principles, you're going to do about as well as you can do unless you raise your own food.
Okay, 80% fresh fruits and vegetables, 20% meat, eggs, dairy.
Right.
Okay. And what about cooking? Do we want our vegetables raw, preferably?
Interestingly, in general, fruits are better raw. Many vegetables actually have increased ORAX, or antioxidant capacity, when they're cooked. So now you wouldn't cook lettuce, of course, and things like that, but broccoli and a lot of other vegetables actually are slightly healthier when they're cooked.
Okay. All right, so that's tonight's presentation at the Doubletree Hotel, Springfield, Missouri, and for 1 hour, plus time for questions. Dr. Shealy,
exactly.
When you take questions, how long do the questions and answer period? How long does that last?
Well, it could go anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Very good. That sounds like a wonderful event. Are you going to do it again next week?
Yes. Next week actually is the last scheduled one. Because we have added some additional space at the clinic, we may increase it there after next week.
Okay. And when we come back, let's tell our listeners, if they'd like to participate in the scalar study, what they need to do to contact you. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, for those who are in the area and they want to get in touch with you about the scalar study next Wednesday, what shall they do?
I think the best is to email me, norm@normshealy.com, and tell them they're interested. Now, obviously, in order to be involved in the study, they've got to be in the greater Springfield area.
Okay, Springfield, Missouri. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they need a calcium score done, and we're trying to get that.
I will give them a prescription reduced. To get that if they, need it.
Okay, and let's talk about the logistics and the cost. Okay, so what would they do for this study?
They have to have a calcium score, which currently costs $170, and they have to do another calcium score 2 weeks after finishing the study. So it's going to cost them $340 now. in order to be in the study, but it won't cost them anything for the up to 24 hours that they spend in the scalar room.
Okay, so you're providing the scalar room study, and the calcium score test is just to determine how successful the scalar energy has been on their bodies, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, and do you have any anticipation of what they might experience, any maladies that you might experience positive reversals of?
We actually are including, not for the calcium score, but just a few other patients with various pain and emotional problems to see what kind of effect we get. But we don't need any more for that. We've got more than enough.
Okay. What about circulatory issues?
It depends. Obviously, circulatory injuries suggest something wrong with the heart most of the time. So we wouldn't include them unless they had a calcium score.
Okay. All right. And so if they're in the Springfield area, would there be a specific number of visits to the clinic?
They could go up to 8 hours a day if they want to, or they can come in 1 or 2 hours at a time, but they have to agree to spend at least 12 hours, and I strongly prefer 24.
Okay. Minimum 12, recommended 24 hours. It can be a couple hours at a time or 8 hours at a time. So 3 times 8 is 24 hours, 3 8-hour days. And can they read, or can they do something during
They
those?
will sit in a recliner and rest. No reading, no talking.
No reading, no talking. Okay. Total relaxation.
Total relaxation.
Okay. And do we need to let you know in advance which days we would be there?
Well, yeah, we have to sort of schedule it because we can probably have up to 4 people in the room at one time.
Okay, that's what
but not a huge number.
Okay, very good. So Norm at normshealy.com, that's the contact, Norm at normshealy.com, Norm at normshealy.com. Let them know if you're interested, please. And my plan is to be there as well. Also, Dr. Shealy, I was looking at the schedule for the RK Prepper shows, and I happen to be on the calendar for December 3rd and 4th in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I'll be speaking Saturday and Sunday, December 3rd and 4th in Indianapolis, Indiana. If you'd like to go to the website, it's rkpreppershows.com. And I'll post a link on our website, usaprepares.com. Also, if you're interested in gun shows this weekend, November 25 and 26, where? Lexington, Kentucky, Sedalia, Missouri, Knoxville, Tennessee, Springdale, Arkansas, and Lawrenceville, I believe that's in Lawrenceville, Georgia. So those are the locations for RK gun shows this weekend. Okay, Dr. Shealy, I was reading an article about those, well, I guess they're called sports drinks. And this one in particular is called Red Bull. Now, I know a guy who's been to the farm who I believe he would say he's not addicted. I think he is addicted because after a few hours of not having one of these Red Bulls, he's looking for one. He's looking for a reason to go to the gas station or a location where he can get some more caffeine in large quantities. And here's what it says. It says there's an infographic showing what Red Bull does to your body after you drink it. And here's what it says. In the first 10 minutes after finishing a can of Red Bull, the caffeine begins to permeate the bloodstream after the first 10 minutes. In turn, your heart rate and blood pressure start to pick up pace. 15 to 45 minutes later, if you drink it fast, you'll start feeling more alert and concentrated. I guess that means you'll be able to concentrate more around 15 minutes later. Slow drinkers may not feel the effects for about 40 minutes. Goes on to say 30 to 50 minutes later, caffeine absorption is complete. Your pupils dilate, your blood pressure rises. As a response, your liver dumps more sugar into your bloodstream. The adenosine receptors in your brain are now blocked, preventing drowsiness. Your blood sugar spikes, causing an insulin burst. Your liver responds to this by turning any sugar it can get its hands on into fat, of which there's plenty. 1 hour later, your 1 hour later, your body starts to experience a sugar crash, as well as the effects of caffeine dying down. You'll start to feel tired and energy levels will start to feel low. You've also now urinated out all the water that was in the Red Bull. First, however, that water was infused with valuable nutrients that your body could have used to hydrate your system or strengthen your bones, which were washed out. 5 or 6 hours later, the amount of caffeine in your body is halved. For women who take the pill, it would take 10 hours. 12 hours later, the time it takes for most people to fully remove the caffeine, 12 hours later is the time it takes for most people to fully remove the caffeine from their bloodstream. The speed at which this happens depends on many factors from age to activity. 12 to 24 hours later, the 12 to 24 hours later, withdrawal symptoms kick in about a day after you've had...
Sorry.
This sounds pretty serious, doesn't it? I mean, this is all in a can. You just pop the top and down this can of Red Bull. After a day after you've had your caffeine hit, you're in the mood for another. And if you become used to a daily or more regular fix, you start to feel lethargic, distressed, or experience headaches and constipation. 7 to 12 days later, studies show that this is the time frame that your body becomes tolerant to your regular caffeine dose. That means you get used to it and you won't feel the effects as much. So that's what it said about this Red Bull. Your thoughts?
It's almost as bad as a drug. I mean, it is a drug in a sense. It's dangerous. I actually had a young lady several years ago who almost died from drinking too many of those so-called energy drinks. And it took me 3 months to get her back to normal.
Can you describe your procedure that you used to get her back to normal?
Oh, yes. Obviously, at the top of the list is the LIST cranial electrical stimulator 1 hour every morning. In addition, they must take my essential multivitamin mineral, my youth formula, and use magnesium lotion. And they've got to do autogenic training or related biogenics, mental retraining exercises, a minimum of an hour and a half or two a day.
So, Dr. Shealy, this sounds like this was a serious addiction.
Well, it was.
Is that
this
right?
woman literally wound up in the emergency ward, then her brain didn't function well. By the way, interestingly, now she just finished nursing school this year, so, it is potentially recoverable if you get to it before you get too bad.
Let me see if I've got this right. It sounds like you saved her life. Is that correct?
Yes, I think you could say that's unequivocally.
Okay. So maybe the first thing that parents should do if they see their children drinking these, it looks like maybe it's just a soda and maybe it appears to be innocuous. Of course, soda is not, but this is enhanced. So parents, maybe you should take some action and start reducing the amount of these energy drinks that your children consume. And maybe they're consuming them for sports events at school to perform better.
Exactly. Exactly. A little bit of caffeine seems to be okay. What's a little bit? Up to 3 cups of coffee a day. That's the equivalent that I think is safe.
Now, when you say 3 cups of coffee a day, you don't mean one after the next, do you? You mean spaced over time,
spaced,
don't you?
yes. I wouldn't drink 3 cups all at once. Would be like taking Red Bull.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, I remember traveling from Virginia to Missouri, driving a truck and a trailer, our Dodge turbo diesel. And I stopped at a coffee shop, gas station, convenience store, Stop and Rob, whatever you want to call them, in Virginia, where I frequently tanked up the truck to head over the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, and with diesel fuel. And I would buy a large cup of coffee there, and they had, creamers. They had French vanilla and others, and they had one called Stoke, S-T-O-K-E. It had some caffeine in it. And let me tell you what, I've just put 2 of those in a cup of coffee. I was awake for the entire 1,100-mile trip.
Oh, yeah. No question
and I was almost stuttering. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us, normshealy.com, if you want to sign up for that same newsletter that I get multiple times per week. Dr. Shealy, I have a technical tip that I'd like to share with our class before very quickly. This is alarming to me. Class, this is about headphones, earbuds. Now, I have a set of headphones on right this moment, and that's so I can hear the return of what this broadcast is doing. And headphones are essentially loudspeakers, but they're smaller. Now, sometimes they're really small, and they call them earbuds, and you just place them in your ear, and you can hear the sounds. Well, they consist of a couple components. One is they have a magnet, they have a coil of wire, and they have a diaphragm that vibrates, creating the sound. Well, a microphone is very much similar to that. Magnet, coil of wire, diaphragm that moves as the vibrations move it, the sound of the voice going into the microphone or whatever you happen to be recording. So they're similar in many respects. Well, here's the problem. There are some researchers in Israel, and they developed some software that will literally reverse the connection of the microphone and the earphone jacks in your computer. So they turn the microphone jack into the earphone jack and vice versa. Now, what that means is because the microphones and earphones are similar, if you have your earphones or headphones or earbuds plugged into your computer, that can be remotely turned into a microphone and turned on. So I just wanted to share that with you. So, boy, oh boy, you may want to power that darn computer off if you're not using it so that your headphones and maybe even the speakers in your computer could be reversed and turned on as a microphone. Just wanted to share that disturbing thought.
Fascinating, of course. It's
alarming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So medically, Dr. Shealy, I had this question about blood transfusions. I'm not looking forward to getting one. I don't plan on getting one. I don't see one in the near future. But is there a difference, medically speaking, when a person gets a blood transfusion from someone, a patient who is younger? Let's say, someone who is in the peak of health, a young teenager, for example, compared to someone who is older. If one were to get a transfusion and you had the choice, do you want one from 15-year-old, 40-year-old, 60-year-old? Is there a medical reason why the age of the blood might be, age of the person donating the blood might be preferable?
Well, in general, I think you probably would not want to take blood from anyone much under the age of 18 for many reasons.
Okay.
Not that they're not healthy, it's just that they need not to be under any additional physical stress.
Okay.
And
So
I
it's
mean,
for the
remember,
donor.
they really don't grow up until 25. In general, the metabolism doesn't mature until about age 25. And so you don't want to do things that aren't necessary for their health. Now, over the age of 50, people tend to have more problems. And so in order to donate blood, they just need to be healthy and have a few basic tests to be sure they are healthy.
Okay, so do locations that accept blood donations, do they track the age, with the blood?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. And do they screen? Do they say to someone who they think might be sick, do they say, thanks so much for donating, we'll take good care of your blood, and then do they destroy that blood so it doesn't get used?
Well, if it doesn't meet the safety standards, yes, it'll have to be discarded.
Great. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
And the same to you and yours.
And Dr. Shealy, I will see you in person. We'll be broadcasting live next Wednesday at the clinic.
In the scaler room.
In the scaler room. Thank you so much.